appreciate you raising the bar really high. So I'm going to be talking today about how targeted should we get. Just to kind of set the stage for you, I'm going to be talking about the organic side after we get supporters in the door. Once they are on an email list, how we talk to them. My background is in email, particularly in email fundraising. Before I was at the DNC, I was an email fundraising writer on the Obama 2012 campaign and the email director at Organizing for Action, which is the group that grew out of the Obama campaign and had the Barack Obama campaign list in 2013 and 2014. So, I know a lot of folks in the room here are more from the other side, from the vendor side, and do a lot of work of thinking about how to find the people to get on our list. I want to thank you for all your help in letting us do what we do, and also consider kind of the subtitle of this presentation, hello, from the other side of things. So to get started, we have more data in the 2016 cycle than we've ever had before. We have more information that we're able to collect on our supporters, what they do, what they haven't done, how they vote, what they care about. We also have tools that are the most robust they've ever been. We can do things with conditional content that we couldn't even dream of doing even a presidential cycle ago. We can send things faster, and I think particularly with the committees and presidential campaigns, have really had an opportunity to take the email tools that we use and really test them to the edges. How many sends can we send? How fast can we send? How many people can we reach? How targeted can we get? So with all that being said, we are somewhat limitless in what we can do. But from working in this field for quite a while now, and even longer in digital years, I wanted to share a few of the greatest hits and greatest misses, or things that used to work and don't quite work anymore, in terms of how we take that data and whether it actually moves people to take action. And just to be clear, when I'm talking about folks, I'm going to call them supporters. That's what I'm used to calling them. When I'm talking about performance today, I'm talking about donations. So first thing, and things that should work that have it, regional targeting. And this is one of the first questions I often get on email lists. You have this great big list, you have millions of people you can talk to. How do you divide up? Do you divide up by state? Do you divide up by region? Do you divide up by city? And serve people individualized content? The question is sometimes, of course, when we're building for volunteer opportunities, when we're building for rallies, but when it comes to overall messaging, we saw this time and time again in 2012 and since, is that really isn't the best use of our time. A good example of this is in 2012, we thought it would be really interesting to take the country, divide it into regions, and send each region specialized content on what President Obama was going to do for them, what he had done, what he was going to do. This was really exciting. We were going to do a whole narrative arc around it. I was particularly excited because I was writing from the Midwest. I'm from Ohio. And so I was like, great, I get to talk to my people. So we send out all these emails to different regions and over a track of time, and we found that for the most part, it really didn't work. What we did find, however, is that certain segments really popped. We started looking at what is it about how we're talking to folks, what is it about the messaging that's really working? And what we found was an answer that was a little simpler than we had originally imagined. And that's that the things that were popping most were correlating mostly with how people felt, what the biggest problem was, what the biggest issue on their mind was. In 2012, still coming out of the recession, of course the economy was the top. And all the regions where the messaging that we had was very much focused on the economy, that's what really popped. In areas where it wasn't doing so well. So I think this is one good example, and you see email lists, a lot of the big committees and national email lists today, overall using a broad message to people. You can use conditional content to put in specifics that are relevant to their state or where they're from, but overall, on big lists, people are more the same than they're different. Second thing, donors and non-donors. When I first started doing email, 2010, 2011, 2012, we would test, of course, a variety of different pieces of content, a variety of different subject lines, and we would do that all for donors, and then we would duplicate it and do it all for non-donors. The idea being that what we thought would make someone come in the door for the first time would be different than what would make someone give again. We finally realized that this was not only taking a whole bunch of our time, but is there really a difference? Is there a difference most of the time? So we ran some long-term testing in 2012 and found that In not all cases, but really, mostly, overall, there's a chance that what moved donors to their action was going to be the same thing that moved non-donors to take their first action. We did, however, find that how you asked them made a really big difference. And this is where we decided to, and where we continue to spend a good amount of our time. There used to be testing that we found that if you wanted to make an ask, that you would state it imperatively to donors. You'd state it with a question mark to non-donors. That doesn't really hold anymore, but that's just an example of it. So we found that the way you bring people into campaigns, the way you move them up the ladder of engagement, really depends not so much on the overall messaging, but on how you're asking them. So this is an example of some of the asks that we've been testing recently at Emily's List. And then last, and the things that should work or haven't, is time of day. And I think for anyone who has done email and been in this game a while, this used to be hugely critically important. And talking to practitioners, when you would work with new people, everyone seemed to have an idea of when was the best time to send and when you should not be sending email. Some of it I think bordered on superstition, in that you can't do that then, you can't send that there, it won't perform. So just examples of things I've heard over the years: when you send, when you shouldn't send. For people who have been around, you will remember this. And these were all the rules that you would hear depending on who you're talking to. As we saw, someone in 2012, definitely in 2014, and absolutely in 2016, is that this really doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to before. And there's a few reasons for that. As we're talking about multi-screen democracy today, mobile makes a big difference. When we used to know people were offline on their way to work, they are now online. In bigger cities, they're on a train, they're on a bus. Second reason for this, and I'm a strong believer in this, is the Gmail tag box. I was at Organizing for Action, and that first rolled out in 2013, and I was sure that it was going to kill our open rates and kill our performance. We have to keep really close track on it. We did. It didn't make that big of a difference. What we did see, though, is in overall performance of an email, we weren't seeing things come in the first day or two. We were seeing a much longer tail. It would be 3 or 4 days to get the full performance of how something was going to do. And the last thing that I think really affects this is that it's so much easier to donate than it has been before. With things like Quick Donate, Express Donate, being able to save your payment information has really changed the way, in that you don't have to think about when you're going to catch someone at their computer with their credit card, able to take the time and get it out. People are clicking with just a button. And we encourage more people on as much of our list to do that as possible. And it really has changed the game in terms of when we send. One of the most interesting things from this now is when I started at Emily's List, I still was someone who said, not Friday night. Never going to send Friday night emails. It's a black hole. Don't do it. My team said, but wait, if you look at one of these times that we have, it actually has done well. We went back, we tested it, and it actually is strangely one of our best performers, particularly if we're not sending anything else on the weekend. The tail of it lands over the weekend, we can start again Monday. So those are kind of the things that may seem more obvious, kind of some of the first questions I'll get about how we target and segment that either haven't held true or don't hold true anymore. Now I want to talk about 3 that have panned out, and these are, I think, some of them a little more surprising than others. First, highlighting action on a personal level. This is something you're seeing campaigns do, you're seeing large organizations do, you're seeing people do it on both sides of the aisle this cycle. What I also call this when I talk about highlighting action is literally taking anything and everything a supporter has done and giving it back to them in a way that encourages them to take further action. At its most basic level, let's see if I can use this. I don't know where my pointer went. On the left side, at its most basic level, you can call out whether is someone given in a year. Are you a 2015 donor, yes or no? This is really the most basic. You will see us at Emily's List do this. Where we're focusing a lot of our more time on now is what else do we have about people? What else is really interesting? What's novel? What's motivating? Emily's List is a 30-year organization, and we actually have donation data going back for some of our folks all the way back to 1985. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool to take the first time that someone donated, put it in the subject line, remind them of that, and additionally, talk about what happened that cycle that as a result of their donation, and then use that, particularly for lapsed donors, people who haven't been in the fold for a while, to remind them of why they came in the first place and motivate them to give again. And you'll see all kinds of variations of this. Most recent donation, last donation, donation in a certain time of period, number of donations over a year. You're seeing this all over the place because it works and people really seem to respond to it. I do always give a caveat at this section that a lot of people will ask, is it creepy? Do people think it's creepy and strange that you know so much about them? And really what we found is the way that you do it makes a difference. When framed respectfully and when framed with a lot of appreciation for what people have done and not just giving someone's data back to them, but framing it in a larger narrative, we find that really people appreciate it, and especially when they do have a long-standing relationship to an organization, they like to know that you are keeping tabs on what they've done and are still thankful for their help. Second thing, recognition and grouping. This is another thing that you're seeing trend-wise all over the place, particularly from the campaigns. What we found is by taking groups of our list, creating groups for people to be in, and then showing whether people are or aren't in a group is a really powerful motivator. You're seeing this a lot in membership drives from both Republicans and Democrats, and different kinds of membership, different kinds of tiered membership. This has been really effective for us. Luckily at Emily's List, we've been a membership-driven organization for 30 years. We've been doing this on phones and in the mail forever, and we only started doing this a few years ago online, but this is one of the most effective things that we do. Similarly, this is something we did at Organizing for Action. This is a donor wall. The idea behind here is what's another way that we can recognize people. You know, often in museums you'll see people have bricks or walls with different donors, different levels of donors. We knew, we actually did make a donor wall at the headquarters in Chicago, but we knew that most people weren't going to be out there, so we thought about how can we make sure everyone knows that they're being recognized. We made a virtual donor wall with first name, last initial. People could search how many people with their name are on it, what states they're from, and this proved to be very effective. Quarter after quarter, we brought it back. The colors would change, but most of the concepts stayed the same. A really effective way to motivate people to give around a certain time. A slightly different take on recognition and grouping has to do with how we talk about our candidates. So at Emily's List, we endorse and support candidates all the way from president down to state and local elections. We have, from previous cycles, data on who people have given to. Part of what we do is we also do bundling. We ask people to donate directly to campaigns. 100% of their donation goes directly to the campaign. So in looking at our candidates for this cycle, some of them are more well known than others, we thought about what can we draw about what people have done before that may suggest or recommend an action for this time. So we called this kind of our take on an Amazon or Netflix. If you like these candidates, you may like these. It was actually the subject line for this. And took who people had given to in previous cycles and then recommended who they should learn more about or perhaps donate to this cycle. And the last thing I'll talk about is identity. This is critically important in an organization, particularly in a legacy organization that isn't on a cycle basis. How do we continue to build brand identity with our supporters? As I was saying before, we have a number of candidates up and down the ticket that we are encouraging people to not only support, but to make donations to. So one of our challenges is how do we take someone in Ohio or Florida and convince them that a Senate race or a House race in a different state is not only something that they should care about and know about, but donate to and support, and kind of tell the story of how that actually will affect them down the line if the person makes it to their primary, if they get elected. It's kind of a long narrative to get people to tell. So this is something where we've really used self-reporting and surveys. Throughout all last year, we asked our list, what are you most interested in? It could be presidential races, gubernatorial races, Senate, House, state, or local. From that, we looked at their previous behavior and saw what kinds of races are they interested in within that. Are they interested in Senate holds and keeping legacy seats like Barbara Mikulski's seat in Maryland? Are they interested in keeping that seat blue? Are they more interested in the seats we can flip? Are they motivated more by our opponent on the other side or on a really great personal story? By taking that data about people and targeting it smartly, we started grouping together our candidates to tell an overall story. This is an example from last cycle in which we found that Michelle Nunn and Allison Landrigan-Grimes, unfortunately both did not make it, but we found that they worked really well together. Geographically similar, really tough races, Republicans that our folks had strong feelings about. By grouping them together, we saw a greater performance than if we would have kept them individually. And the last piece is that identity also has been really important for us on social. A big part of what I consider my job is knowing as much about our supporters and how they identify and how they think about themselves and what they care about as possible. For social, we found that one of the biggest ways to continue to build brand and identity with the organization is take those things that we know about them and share it in social in a way that if people feel that and identify with, they're going to share too. This is something we did a few weeks leading up to a few weeks before the 2014 election last year. We chose, this wasn't just a random list, but very purposely chose how we wanted to define it and had people, ask people to share this. The idea here is that people want to share a story about themselves on social. They want to talk about who they are and what they believe in. As an organization, we want to make it as easy as possible for them to do that. And this post, I have the stats up here, even though as a digital practitioner, I will never say things went viral, but in our own Mick world, it went viral. We usually saw a reach of 500,000 to 1 million. We saw, as you can see, about 7 million up here. Same thing holds for Emily's list. When we had Planned Parenthood in the news a lot in the last few months of 2015, we found that this was one of our top performing graphics, not only saying I stand with Planned Parenthood, but also putting our organization up top, I am Emily. This combination and helping people have the identity of I'm speaking as part of this group and this is also what I believe, proved to be more successful than keeping them separate. So, to sum it up. 2016 brings us an unprecedented amount of data on our supporters and prospective supporters, but not all data is equal. Just because we have information on folks and really interesting ways to target doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to react or perform based on it. So that being said, a few things that we do know, data that acknowledges previous action, encourages membership, and provides opportunity can yield strong results, but this is always the caveat I'll get, but don't take it from me, test wisely. Every list is different, every group of supporters or targets is different, so when you see something out there and it looks good, just like to encourage folks to make sure you're thinking about the psychology and motivation around why people are doing it. Try to replicate that before you just replicate what you see on the tactical side. So, it was a lot. That's all I have. What questions do folks have?
Oh, over here.
Hi, I'm Matthew Virtue with Pinsight Media. Have you thought or explored using push notifications to enhance your email?
We have not, but it could be interesting.
Would you be open to that?
Yeah. Wait a second.
I think you just got pitched.
Yeah, no, we haven't done that, but I think anything that helps differentiate between inboxes, I mean, we spend so much of our time looking at subject lines and finding subject lines that continue to get people to open, testing senders. Anything that helps differentiate, especially in a crowded marketplace as we have now, I think is generally helpful.
Well, how is, to extend that, how has the the migration to mobile impacted your messaging strategies?
I'd say for messaging, not so much overall in what we're saying, but really in how we're producing it. I mean, there is not one email that goes out the door with us making sure that it renders correctly in mobile. Particularly in our graphics, I think it's taken our emails, we may be using less words than before as people are reading on phones. Emails used to be like 1-2 page kind of doctrines of what was going on. They're shorter and snappier, reflecting the fact that people are looking on the go and looking at multiple things at once. But we really do see that scrolling for length is the most important thing we can do. And you'll actually, you can tell, why is this email so long? Why is this graphic so long and narrow in desktop? We really are looking to focus on mobile and mobile first, how people will read it and experience it.
I want to tease out one of the points that you raised about getting over the creepy factor.
Yes.
of using a contributor's personal and behavioral history within the context of an email. And you mentioned that the way to get beyond that point is to wrap it into a larger narrative. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? That the nature of that narrative and the kinds of techniques that sort of make people feel more comfortable with seeing their own history put into the message?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, we always start with a level of respect in talking with our list. So I think if you go back, particularly if you're talking to segments of your list that haven't done a lot or haven't done a lot lately, if you're just going to put in a graphic, 0 donations for 2015, no actions taken, it's going to turn a lot of people off. So we are very careful about how we talk to folks who haven't done as much, and always just make sure to kind of meet them where they're at and then ask them to take the next step. Like, we never tell them it's bad that you have or haven't done anything. We acknowledge it, we thank them, and then ask them to do the next thing. But particularly, we did a push for recurring donors in December. And we found that besides just asking folks to be recurring donors, what really worked was talking about the narrative of what a recurring donation actually does. In 2016, we have a number of candidates. People drop in, people come into races, big ad buys come up against them. And we said that by making a recurring donation, you're making sure that every month we're able to respond to what we need to and help no matter what comes a candidate's way. So I think really tying those tactics in the larger narrative is more helpful and kind of gets people over the, why are you reporting back to me what I did 10 years ago kind of thing.
Hi, how you doing? Brett Wagner from Live Intent. So a lot of your focus here has been on, once you have these email lists and segmented, that what you're doing with them to optimize them. What about how you're growing your email list? How has that been done? What do you find to be most effective?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the tried and true pieces of list building have been most effective for us. Facebook is a huge piece of what we do. We've also seen a lot of luck with petitions and with advertising on websites, particularly around certain issues. We were going up over the entire summer with petitions on certain sites, depending on every time there was a negative vote. A lot of what we do is on choice and women's issues. Anytime there was a negative vote in Congress, we would go out with a different petition and really kind of capture the energy around that to bring people into the list. But I'd say those are the two biggest kind of tried and true things that we do.
Caitlin Mitchell, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you guys.
You hit the bar. You hit the bar. Thank you.